Yo, what's going on? Alex here, guys. Alright, and so I had a pretty good idea for a video series on the channel. Now, fishermen don't have the best reputation for keeping track of their belongings. Now, when I say belongings, I'm not just talking about fishing things, I'm talking about everything. Now, this includes trash, their personal belongings like phones and clothes and etc. And also their fishing tackle, of course. So lures and sinkers and line and reels and rods and etc. etc. Now, over the course of my life fishing, as long as I have, I've found thousands of dollars of fishing lures and I've found a brand new fishing rod and pliers and all kinds of things in the rivers and lakes and on the creeks and on the banks and rocks and everything. Fishermen leave it all. That's what I'm getting at. And so it gave me a good idea for a video series on the channel. After every month, since I'm out there fishing all the time and picking up things, picking up fishermen's garbage and lures and whatnot, I do find some useful things and I also find a lot of garbage. I figured I would start keeping track of everything that I find and then show it to you guys at the end of every month. Now, this is going to be one video a month at the end of the month where I show you everything that I found. We go over it and kind of talk about how we think maybe that the things got lost, or maybe find some usability in the things that I found, and just kind of look at it. I think this is going to be a pretty cool series. Tell me what you guys think in the comments down below if you want me to keep doing this, but without further ado, let's look at everything we found for the month of July. Alright, so obviously you find all kinds of things in the rivers, but one of the most common things that I find in particular is obviously going to be lead weight. Now, I'm sure you guys have come across these all the time, but unless you're really looking in the rocks or looking on the bottom of the river, you're probably not going to find a lot of them. But I mean, even when you're bottom fishing and you reel in, you could pull in somebody's line with a sinker on it. I mean, the things are just littered everywhere, especially at the ocean. And that's where I found a lot of these here. So my dad and I had pulled up on a bridge piling at low tide. The cool thing about this area is there was a bridge and then there was another bridge. And now how this happens a lot of times is down on the coastline, they'll have a bridge and then they'll end up replacing it with a newer bridge, but they don't fully take out the other bridge. They kind of leave it there for recreational purposes like fishing and stuff like that. So you've got this kind of stunted half bridge that's right next to the main bridge. And then on the main bridge pilings, there's just oysters all over them. But since there's people fishing on the older bridge, they're constantly casting next to the pillars that they can cast to and getting hung up. And so when we were driving the boat, I noticed there was all kinds of lead all over this piling. And I was like, Dad, when we're done fishing, I want to go back and get all those lead weights off of there. Not only just so that I can have some, because I mean, these are, 50 cents a piece a lot of the times. Some of them closer to $1 a piece. That's a lot of money to pick up, obviously, but also the environmental impact. I don't want to leave lead weights in the river, and I don't want to leave them in the water, especially, even though they were on the pilings at high tide, they are completely submerged. And now a lot of these you'll notice are super discolored, like they've been in there for a long time. They were even attached to a lot of wire leaders, and so I kind of had to pull out some pliers and snip them off, and I pulled out as many as I possibly could. But I mean, if you take a look in here, there's probably 1.5 pounds of weights in here. It was crazy, and a lot of this was just from that one doing. We sat there for about 20 minutes and just pulling lead weights off of this thing. I've got kind of like these high-low rig weights here. I've got a lot of the triangle sinkers, which are really, really popular with bank fishermen on the coastline. Some of them aren't even usable. They've got like barnacles on them. Like, look at this guy here. If you look at that, he's got like barnacles on him there. Like they've just been in the water forever. But I went ahead and got all of those out of the river, and I'll actually be able to use some of them. Some of them are almost brand new. Like, if you look at this bad boy here, I mean, he's almost a brand new pyramid sinker with a snap on it that still works. Like, yeah, I'll absolutely use some of this stuff when I go down to the beach. That way, when I'm using it, I don't have to worry about losing my stuff. If I lose it, it's stuff I found. So anyway, found some of that. And the next thing was pretty interesting. Something I don't find a lot of, but I find more of than I would expect. Golf balls. Like, I don't know why, but in the rivers I find golf balls all the time, and I don't know if it's from people that are pulled up on the bank and they just want to hit balls into the river instead of going to the driving range, like kids doing that. I don't know, or either that or there's a driving range up rivers and the balls have managed to find their way down the river. I don't know. I was fishing on the bank in the Chattahoochee River the other day, and I noticed about 4 or 5 golf balls just littered amongst the rocks, and so I just reached down and picked them up, put them in my backpack, and went on my way. Kept fishing, but I just picked them up. I mean, if I ever decide to pick up golfing, or if I ever need golf balls for anything, I've got a bunch of them. But in the worst case scenario, I just got them out of the river, you know? Like, I'm just not going to leave things like this in the river. I don't like any trash in the river. I like my rivers to be clean, and you should too. Pick up anything you find in the rivers. But anyway, golf balls. So that's kind of interesting, I guess. But the next thing we found a baseball. So golf balls, where there are golf balls, I guess there are baseballs. But anyway, I know the reason I found this one. I was actually next to, if you guys watched my video where I was catching crappie on that rock bank, there's actually a baseball field right back behind that, and I assume one of these managed to find its way over into the pond from the baseball area. It is actually a pretty nice baseball. It looked like it had been there for a little while, so I wasn't sure, but it's a nice baseball, so I might use it for something. I might drill a hole in it when I, get a house later on and use it as kind of a garage stop. I don't know if you guys have ever seen those before, where people hang a string from their ceiling and attach it to the ball, and they drop it down to the level of their car in the garage, and that way when they're pulling their car up, the ball starts to move right when they're getting to where their car's about as far as it can go in the garage, and that's how they know they're at the right spot. So there's always uses for old stuff like this. You just got to find it and use it for what you can. All right, so the next thing I found here is something I'm sure everybody's found plenty of in the rivers, and that's worms. I find these things literally all day long. Bass fishermen love using worms, and they love to leave their worms everywhere when they're done using them. So I found these, I think, in the river where I was catching the smallmouth. I found one on the bank in a pond. One of them probably just laying up on the bank. I find them everywhere. People open up their packs of worms, they drop them, or they've got hooks in them and they break them off on a rock. A bass tears one off or whatever, the worms are everywhere. But the good thing about these is they don't really have too much of an environmental impact. They're fairly biodegradable and usually. But yeah, plastic worms. Anytime I can find them though, I'm definitely gonna pick them up, take them out of the river, take anything out of the river I can. But I'll find plastic worms everywhere. The only other lure I have to show you guys that I found, unfortunately, this month, I didn't find a lot of lures, which I find a lot of usually, so really surprising, but found a little rooster tail here. The hook, as you can see, has rusted off of it. It's still a pretty cool little rooster tail. I could just easily add another hook onto it. You can still see that shine on the spinner there. Everything looks to be in good condition. Otherwise, I could probably put some new feathers on the back side of it, put a hook on it, and I could make that into a nice little rooster tail there. And honestly, with the lures that I find, I could probably end up doing a fishing challenge at some point or another. I think that would be pretty cool. All right, so the next thing I found was something I'm sure everybody finds a million of as well, and that's a bobber. Now, I did find a bunch of other bobbers while I was out, but they were all hanging in a tree. And I call these Christmas trees because they're just far enough off the bank where people don't want to go get them, myself included. There are just corks everywhere. I always pick these up when I find them. They're bright orange, they're easy to see, and sometimes you can get some good use out of them. Now, this one here is all bent and crooked, and it would probably still work, but I do not use bobbers that often. If I do, I use little bitty corks, but I always pick these up out of the river and get them out. So the next thing I found, before I go into the thing that I actually am using currently, is just a little carabiner. I don't know where I found this actually, but you can see the mechanism still opens and closes, so that's pretty cool. I could probably use this for something, attaching something to my backpack or whatever. Looks like there's a UST engraved on it. I'm not sure what that means. If you guys know what that means, put it in the comments down below. I have no idea what that is. Maybe it's a brand or something, but cool little carabiner. I don't find too many of those. Now, the next thing that I found in the river, things I actually use. So I found this pair of pliers here, and when I found it, it was looking all rusty like this, and I was like, wow, that's never gonna work. But look at this thing. Opens and closes like butter. I was like, really surprised, and I actually didn't have a good set of pliers to take with me, so I'm actually using these currently. This is my set of pliers right now, so that's really cool. The next thing I found was a flathead screwdriver. Now this thing, you can tell, I mean, it's all chewed up, eaten up. It's been in the river for a while. I don't actually use this because I don't have any faith in it holding. It's probably still usable, but barely. I just pulled it out of the river and put it in my backpack and decided I was going to decide whether I could use it later on. I don't know. But anyway, that's still super cool to me. The last thing that we found, something I actually can't put on the table. We'll zoom over to another camera angle and I'll show you what I found. A freaking bucket. Look at that. Now, if you guys watched my video where I bought things for the YouTube channel based off of the money that I made on the channel, you'll notice that I bought a bucket. That was before I bought this, or found this bucket. Almost brand new, big old bucket. This is actually the bucket I'm actually using to store my cast nets right now, so I'm putting it to good use. The cool, interesting thing about this bucket is I actually found it buried all the way up to here in mud. There was just the rim of the bucket showing, and it was full of mud. I was on the Chattahoochee River making that trout fishing video, the trout fishing in the morning video. I was wading back along the bank on my way to leave, and I noticed that the water level was down a little bit and this bucket was exposed. And I was like, well, there's a bucket, I'm gonna get it out of the river, you know, like just at least check it out. And so it was, I mean, it was super, super covered. I wasn't even sure I was gonna be able to get it out or whether it was gonna be worth it at all. I reached down, started uncovering some of the mud, washed away with some water, and then it was suction cupped into the mud, and so I kind of had to like jiggle it from the top, and it broke free of the mud on the sides, and I was able to pull it out. Lo and behold, it was a solid bucket. Got the handle on it, everything, both the attachments on the sides, perfect, good use, amazing bucket. Just goes to show you, you never know what you'll find in the rivers, you know, or the lakes, ponds, whatever. But I pick out anything I can, use anything I can. That's how I get a lot of my tackle sometimes. I find $10 lures, $5 lures in the river consistently. If you guys are ever around and you see trash laying around from fishermen, be better than they are. Pick the stuff up. A lot of times you find good use out of it, and that's kind of the moral of this story. And I'm gonna plan on keep doing these every month. I'm going to try to make another video with everything that I've found, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you do, leave it in the comments down below. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this kind of video, and look forward to seeing what I find in future months of fishing. I will see you guys in the next video. Remember, a bad day fishing is better than a good day anywhere else, and we will see you guys in the next one.